Hi everyone, Bob Dietrich here with the ADHD Toolbox. We have an awesome presentation today, and this is going to really blow your mind because it's new technology in the field of ADHD and cures for all sorts of brain-related issues that are going on, but especially ADHD. And it's my honor to have Barry Bruder here with Sandy Renfro. Barry is the founder and president, co-founder and president of a company called IASIS. And I'm going to let Barry talk about that. And Sandy is one of the IASIS certified providers, and she's going to tell us what it's like to use the equipment. Now, you may have heard of neurofeedback before, and this is not neurofeedback. This is microcurrent neurofeedback, and there's also other names for it. So I'm going to let Barry take it away. Barry, tell us what is IASIS and how is it different from neurofeedback.
Thank you, Bob. I'm really honored to be here and to be with Sandy, one of our esteemed IASIS certified providers, having completed all of her wonderful training. Really gifted at what she does, and we're grateful for the privilege of being able to share with your audience because ADD and ADHD are extremely near and dear to us as two of the conditions that we think are most critical that we have an opportunity to share this technology whose time has come. And we'll get more into that specifically for the condition, but IASIS, which comes from the Greek iasis, which means curing or curative and healing to be specific. But we don't call it the e-phone, we call it the iPhone. So we call it IASIS. And IASIS Technologies microcurrent neurofeedback is a very little teeny tiny current of energy, approximately 100th of a AA battery. It's actually such a small amount of energy that you have to have about $500,000 worth of technology to even be able to register and see that amount of energy. Very non-invasive. There are doctors that have said, like Dr. Frank Schallenberger, a functional integrative doctor, I wouldn't hesitate to use this on a pregnant woman, on a baby, virtually on any person, any age, any condition. It is also referred to as TES, transcranial electrical stim. Even though it is a teeny tiny amount of energy, it is enough energy to mediate its effects, to do what it is intended to do. And it is the first of its kind of technology. Well, there are many wonderful technologies out there and many forms of neurofeedback that are wonderful out there, to have what we call image-based evidence that this technology works in the form of a published pilot study with the University of California at San Diego and the VA, both IRB, Institutional Review Board approved, published in September of 2017.
Wow. So so when you say imaging, you mean you use this stuff and they're taking images of the brain to see the activity or the spinal column? What's the imaging do and what does it show?
Excellent question, Bob, because the first thing people want to know is, are you mapping my brain? Are you going to give me pictures of my brain? And we say, no, we're not going to give you pictures of your brain. We're going to help you heal yourself to feel better. It is, in fact, the research that utilized the combination and utilizes, because we are now in a double-blind study, federally funded, 175 veteran, $1.2 million grant that went to the University of California, San Diego, for the same PI, principal investigator, Dr. Ming-Chao Huang. And Dr. Huang is taking MRI and MEG and overlaying those image-based forms of evidence so that we can actually see the changes in the brain waves. And I can explain more about that if you'd like, about how it actually works and how we can see that in the brain waves if you'd like.
Yeah, I understand it works great for PTSD. You've got studies on that. And yeah, so explain a little bit about how it works and how specifically it relates to ADD, ADHD.
Sure. So to keep this in a framework that is not science person to science person talk, but to a mom and a dad that have a child that has ADD or ADHD. Let's just kind of distill it down to its most understandable form. When the brain isn't working the way that we need it to work, sometimes we get a little stuck in what we call sympathetic freeze. We get stuck in that fight or flight mode. And when that happens, Bob, and the brain gets stuck in that mode, sometimes we're a little bit too hyperactive, we're a little bit too distracted. A lot of the different aspects of the condition that we call ADD or ADHD, when we're too stuck in that sympathetic freeze, it's difficult to just relax, chill, be in the moment. And most importantly, for a child in school, how do we get a child to be able to assist and help to support them with focus? Because if they're not able to focus and they're not able to sleep well, it's really difficult for them to bring themselves to the table at school and to be able to understand what the teacher is talking about. And that's where IASIS comes in. So what it's really doing in its really simplest way that I can explain it is that it's stimulating all the brain waves, and it's increasing all the brain waves. But what tends to happen is when we get bonked on the head and have a head injury, or when we have too much of that fight or flight and we're all ramped up and amped up and we're not able to focus, we have too little of the normal delta waves in the brain. IASIS stimulates the production of more normal, healthy, higher amplitude, because we just don't have as high of an amount of healthy delta waves in the brain, and IASIS is generating more of that, sending that into the brain, which then tells the brain, where we manufacture some of those wonderful calming neurotransmitters, and the heart and the tummy, hey, we need more calming neurotransmitters like GABA, serotonin, endorphins, dopamine. So while it's increasing all these chill, calming neurotransmitters, it's calming down the fight or flight adrenaline, and it's helping those individuals who find it very, very hard to focus to just relax more. And what they report is diminished anxiety, reactivity, impulsivity, better regulated sleep, and across the board, wow, I can focus so much more. And we're not talking about by throwing a med at them. And let me be clear, I'm not saying no med. There's a place for pharmaceutical. Now what I'm saying is there's also a place for what we call electroceutical. Teeny, teeny, tiny amount. And if we can work together with functional integrative physicians and balance it out so that we're doing perhaps some meds where it's needed and some transcranial electrical stim vis-a-vis IASIS where it's needed, that the combination of those two have been found by many, many parents for their children, and the parents in many cases, because the tree doesn't stand far from where its apples fell, for them to be able to focus better too.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. So how does it work? Do you put wires on the head or on the back of the neck, or what exactly? What are the mechanics?
I would love, since we have wonderful Sandra here, I would love to go ahead and kind of hand the baton over to you, Sandra, as a wonderful IASIS certified provider, and ask, would you be willing to take that question, because you do this all day, every day, working with all these wonderful people, and share with them how you do that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Thank you, Bob, for having me.
Sure.
So I can go through a typical treatment. Initially, we would talk to the person and do an intake and get information from them. We want to assess what's going on for them, but we also want to assess like their hardiness versus fragility and determine that so we know what protocol we're going to use. But we attach leads, and we attach them to different areas on the scalp. We have specific site pairs that we will attach to. So we'll clean the area so we have a good and low impedance, and we'll use some type of a paste to attach it and to improve that connection. And then we move it throughout the treatment. So we have 2 reference wires and the ground wire, and then we have 2, what you call it, positive leads that we move throughout that do the site pairs.
Got it. So like 2 here and 1 at the back. Is that what you're saying?
No. I put 1 in the back on the cervical spine area, and then you can put 2 the reference wires behind.
Oh, behind you. Okay.
And then the other 2 I move throughout the treatment. So we start at F3, F4. So I'll start here, and depending on what we're working on, we'll move around the head. We like to bathe the brain in the electrical stimulation, the microcurrent neurofeedback.
And can they feel it? I mean, what does it feel like?
No, I've never had anybody feel anything. They feel calm and relaxed.
Wow.
And, yep. They might come in kind of stressed out. Sometimes I have people fall asleep in my chair.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go through all the mechanics of that, because I got tons of questions about what a certified provider does. Sure. But I want to continue with asking Barry about how he found this stuff. I mean, how do you find this stuff? You accidentally shock yourself on a wall or something? No, that's a joke. How do you find this? How do you develop something like this?
Sure. So, back in the 50s, we had to give, not I don't want to give a whole history lesson, but I think that people will find this a little bit interesting. Back in the 50s, we had a guy named Barry Sternman, and he was working with doing what we call biofeedback.
Right.
And then jump way forward into the 90s, and you have all through that time from the 50s to the 90s, people doing this biofeedback, which in effect is looking at the screen and kind of trying to change something on the screen. So it's almost like playing a game. And if I calm my heart rate and my respiratory rate down, then I can actually get to pop more balloons in my game on the screen.
Right.
So this sort of approach is what we call biofeedback, and it's wonderful. Let me be clear. It's not an either or. It's not like, oh, we're better. No, totally. It's apples and guavas. There is no comparing. They're 2 totally different things. So there is a place for mindfulness training, I call it, that biofeedback is wonderful for. But in the 90s, a man named Len Oakes, OCHS, developed LENS, which is an acronym for Low Energy Neurofeedback System. And I had the privilege of becoming a LENS provider years ago. And I thought, well, gosh, this is really helpful, but it's taking a little longer than I would like, even though it's taking far less than biofeedback, which may start to be effective in about 25 sessions. So in about 5 to 10, I found that when I was a LENS provider, it began to become effective. And I thought, well, what if it can begin to get to the point of enduring sustainability in 1 to 3? So I couldn't find it. And I looked all over the world, and I thought, well, gosh, if I can't find it, I'm naive enough to think maybe I could create it. And so I turned to an electrical engineer who was creating the hardware, and my software engineer, and put the 2 together, and it's kind of how I began the process of creating what we call the ISIS protocols, which are actually preset programs that Sandra alluded to, and we choose one of those 5 preset protocols based on basically where a person is in their brain and nervous system, ranging from fragile in their central nervous system to more hardy. The more fragile, more gentle, the more hardy, a little bit stronger, but the underpinning, and this is a really important thing for me to share with all of your viewers and all the audience, the underpinning, the foundation of ISIS is a word called hormesis. And hormesis means, which I love, the smallest possible dosage to achieve the optimal outcome. It's less is more. And if you think about it, in our world, especially in our wonderful country, we're always thinking, well, bigger is better. But in neuro and in transcranial electrical stim, More is not better. In fact, more can create sometimes a little overstim and can make people a little bit extra tired or wired or kind of spacey. But what we do is so tiny, it's kind of like a little tap on the shoulder to the nervous system. And it's like saying, hey, how's that working for you? Oh, not too well. Try this. And it helps to kind of think of the nervous system as though it's a wagon train stuck in the mud. It
Right.
can't go right. It can't go left. And it's like along we come and we lift it up and put it down on new firm ground.
Mhm.
And we have kind of a redo. It's kind of like a reboot for the brain.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know when I went through my brother's passing, I started to get anxiety and panic attacks that I'd never had before. And I think what you're saying is that my system just kind of got stuck, and
Yes.
that eventually it can go away through different modalities. And this is kind of a fast track to help that.
Yes, absolutely. When that happened to you, Bob,
Mhm.
and when you suffered that magnificent loss, your brain and CNS, central nervous system, got stuck in what we call sympathetic freeze. And we get stuck where we're manufacturing ongoingly too much homocysteine, cortisol, adrenaline, neuroepinephrine, all these kind of fight or flight chemicals, right? And
Yep.
we can't, and someone says, well, stop it. Well, you can't just stop it. You can't just go to therapy and a therapist says, stop it, and you stop it. In the words of Victoria Brown, PhD psychologist in Orange County, who works with many different populations, but here's what this woman said. After 2 months working with IASIS, she said, Barry, I got to tell you this. I have achieved more, quote, unquote, more with my at-risk teenage girl population in 5 sessions working with IASIS with these girls than in 5 years working with therapy alone. So again, I'm not saying no therapy. Therapy is critical. But imagine how it would be for a person who's so stuck from war, cult abuse, sexual abuse, the loss of a loved one, being raped, being wounded, domestic terror attacks. My gosh, there's terrible things happening, to be able to have something that could help without just throwing meds at someone. I'm not saying no meds.
And so that gets us back to ADHD. And
Yes.
so our kids in ADHD that have ADHD, are they stuck in sympathetic freeze as well? Or what's going on that may be different than them, and how does IASIS help that?
Yes. So the best way that I like the way that Dr. Frank Schallenberger and many of the other doctors that I work with, because Sandra and I are surrounded by all these brilliant doctors who are what we call functional integrative doctors. You know, at one point they called them, complementary No, it's not a complement, and it is not an alternative. It's critically needed. It's not an alternative. They need to be right in there. And many of these wonderful doctors have moved over from being an ENT or many other forms of medicine, and they're doing this because it works. They're doing what works. So as many of these doctors have said, like Dr. Schallenberger, it isn't so hard to understand. The brain runs everything. If the brain isn't functioning the way it needs to function, because we're stuck in sympathetic freeze, because of an early life wounding, because of loss, because of what is the number one thing that happens to babies? Because babies get to grow up and be the way that they are, and we are so challenged in those instances. What is missing, right? When the baby's not held, when they're neglected. Neglect is the number one form of abuse for a kid. And if there's nobody there, you can only do so much, to help the kids. So what happens is IASIS comes in. When any one of these possibilities that I just elaborated on that could be the case for that baby that turns into that child, and what's happening? They can't focus. They can't sleep. They're anxious. They have reactivity. Everything causes them to be triggered and to react. And what happened? They're not sleeping. And when they're not sleeping, they're not clearing metabolic waste out of the brain. Listen to that. When we don't sleep properly and we don't have a sufficient amount of delta, healthy delta, normal, higher amount of delta that we call higher amplitude, it means more delta. We don't detox the brain. And then when we don't detox the brain, we're more stuck in fight or flight. What happens? The brain, the body, the nervous system, we can't think straight. We can't focus on the teacher. We can't focus when we're driving the car. We're triggered by everything. But then IASIS comes in, and it increases that healthy delta among all of the different brain waves, and it calms down that revved up feeling, and it helps the sleep improve. This is what people report. Better regulated sleep, diminished anxiety, reactivity, impulsivity, and guess what? These kids who couldn't focus, they're focusing. They had test anxiety because they couldn't focus. Oh my gosh, it's going to take me twice as long. You don't understand, Mom? And all of a sudden, they're going in, they're taking the test. The teacher's saying, Mom, what the heck did you do? How is it that Bobby came in here, he took the test, he aced it, what the heck? Well, he had IASIS neurofeedback. Well, that can't happen well, that's all we did. And no, here's the other thing that happens, Bob, and I know, Sandra, you've seen this, we see this all the time. People get more sensitized to the medication, and guess what? They report to their doc, hey, I don't need as much medication because I'm not feeling quite so revved up and all these other things. And they come to us and they say, hey, can we get off our meds? And we go, whoa, wait a sec. I'm not your doc. Do I look like your doc? You got to go talk to your doctor. And then they go to their doctor and they say, hey, my kid is doing so much better. Does she or he need as much med? Well, gosh, based on what you're saying, I think that maybe we can kind of titrate off. And this is what we see all the time.
Awesome. That's amazing stuff. Well, let's talk about the appointments and how those work and what those look like. So first of all, you have a worldwide network of IASIS certified providers, and Sandy is one of them. So Sandy, what happens typically when people meet you, or they want, let's say they're watching this video and they want to schedule an appointment. They want to come in. What do? They go to the website, IASIS website, which is what?
IASIStech.com. IAS as in Sam, IS Tech, like tech support, TECH,
right.
IASIStech.com. And then there's a little banner around at the top, and it says find a provider. You click, you type in your zip code, and boom, it'll show you a map where they are, tell you about the clinicians, all that great stuff.
Awesome. And so Sandy, you're in San Diego here, right?
Yes.
And so tell us about how the process works. Somebody finds you, they could be a call. What happens from there?
Sure. Thank you for asking.
Sure.
So first, we'll talk to them and find out what their goals are for neurofeedback. And I'll have a good conversation with them to see if this is a good fit for them. I'll send them some forms to fill out initially, and I like to do an intake form where we go over where they're at as far as headaches or sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise, their gut digestion, how is that going, how's their sleep. So we'll go through some initial questions, and they'll rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. So we have that initial information that we can always compare back to. We'll look at that and review that to determine what the protocol would be that we're going to use.
So you create a baseline then?
We establish
awesome.
the baseline. And then, so we'll do a treatment, and as Barry alluded to before, less is more. When we start off very mild, we don't want to cause any sort of reaction, like he's saying. People are coming to feel better, not to have a headache or feel that wired, tired, spacey. So we're very gentle, and in the beginning, we might see them 2 times a week or 3 times a week, depending on what we're working on. And as that sustainability increases, it'll last a little bit longer each time. We taper off, and maybe goes down to 1 time a week, and then every other week, and it just tapers down. There isn't really a set number of sessions. Some people need less. If they haven't had the condition for very long, it could be as few as 4 sessions, 3 sessions.
Right.
Sometimes 1.
How long are the sessions usually?
I would say between 30 and 45 minutes. takes me a little time. We go through the initial intake, review how they're doing even after each session. I have them do, after 24 hours after one of their sessions, they fill out the form, they take it home and bring it back. So we review that before we start the session. And then as I prep their scalp and everything to their head, just to clean it up. It takes a few minutes, and then attach the leads and then the process. So 30 to 45 minutes, depending on what I'm doing.
They don't feel anything. The kids are there. Do you ever do 2 kids at once, or maybe the whole family, or?
All the time.
All the time.
I will have the whole family in my room all the time.
Okay. All right.
Lots of activities for the kids to do while mom is getting her session, and yes.
Awesome. And so the kids are just watching TV or playing with toys or games?
I have lots of different manipulatives in the room. Sometimes they'll bring their own devices. They can do whatever they want, read a book, homework.
Awesome. So so they're doing that. They do it at first maybe 3 times, ideally 3 times a week, it sounds like.
Or 2.
2 or 3. And that goes for how long would you say they go through those sessions?
It's so hard. Everybody always wants to ask that question, and it's just different for everybody. So I really work with the client and talk to them about how they're feeling and how long they're able to sustain that positive effect of the microcurrent neurofeedback. And then we base our next session on that. So we keep in touch after the session. A lot of times we'll schedule an appointment, but we might reschedule it because they're still feeling really well. So it's very individualized for each person, but sometimes, like if an adult that has a chronic issue, you know, we will do 2 to 3 times a week for a few weeks, and then as they're feeling better, they let me know. We see it in their post form, their post intake form, and we'll space them out further and further. And sometimes it goes down to, then I'll see them once every 3 months, and then once every 6 months, and then down to once a year.
Wow. Okay. Now, are the effects permanent? Did they ever have to come back after that year, or
yeah, typically, Barry, you can allude to this also. I feel like, you know, life happens and stressors keep happening. The brain responds much quicker, and one treatment, maybe a year, tends to sustain them. They don't need that same frequency and duration as in the beginning. Their brain recognizes it and responds very quickly and is able to sustain it for a very long period of time after we've gone through the treatments in the beginning initially.
Got it. So I would guess that adults need less treatments than children. Is that right, or is it the other way around?
I would say the opposite, right?
The other way around?
Yes.
Because and why would that be?
The brain has more plasticity the younger you are, and responds quicker. You haven't had the condition as long. I think that it's not as set in your brain. You know, as Barry was talking to you, when you get stuck, you know, that's sort of a habit, and your brain gets stuck in that. And so the older we are, the more we've been stuck. It takes a little bit more to pull them out of that. Okay,
good to know. Good to know. So the session's half hour. Could take maybe 7 weeks or so to go through, and then just maybe down to once a month or so. And then how soon would the parent start seeing results in a child calming down? Would it be after the first week or 2 weeks, or? I know it's different for everybody, but
it is different for everybody. But people will report they see changes after the first session. Definitely the third session, I get a lot of positive reports.
Wow.
And typically the parents notice before the children, but eventually the children will start to report. They notice that it's easier at school. They're not getting in as much trouble. They're able to focus more. But definitely the parents will notice before the kids, or even adults. The teachers, family members and loved ones will notice before.
And I'll bet the teachers notice right away, right? They're probably the first to notice. Yeah. All right. Wow. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. So, are there any side effects? I mean, what should people, because I know parents are going to want to know that.
There are no side effects. There are no contraindications. There's no one that we can't treat. I often say, when people say, well, who exactly is this good for? Is this only for people who are really in deep trouble, not feeling good kind of a thing? And I go, got a brain? It's good for you. Because whether you are what we call down the rabbit hole, really having a difficult time, or you know, and you have a lot of anxiety and depression and reactivity or addiction or ADD, ADHD, Lyme disease, whatever the heck it is, insomnia, it doesn't matter. There are people who are, we work with a lot of peak performance. We work with professional athletes, many of them. I have many of those pro athletes that come to me and they say, man, it just stills my mind. I can think so much more clearly. I'm in the moment. I'm in the groove. I'm able to do what, you know, even sports psychology wasn't able to still my mind quite the way that I feel that IASIS has done that. So you've got peak performance on the one hand. You've got people who are very ill looking for an adjunct to help to support assisting their nervous system along with their immune system that are very, very ill people. Many individuals are working with pediatrics for conditions like POTS, PANDAS, epilepsy. And then you've got garden variety anxiety and depression, and you know that we all in our really stressful world in which we live are facing and that we're seeing every day. And it could really help with any of these. But I want to, you know, say and underscore, as Sandra said, it is because everybody's brain is so very different. You can't really say exactly how many sessions, but there are basically two kinds of people. There are people that have chronic brain issues and body issues, and there are people that have situational ones. And if you got bonked on the head, got in an accident, or playing football, smashed the head, whatever, that's what we call situational. A situational condition, 5 to 10, they're good to go. I mean, like, period, permanent, good to go. Right. What we call the leading edge of enduring sustainability, and 85% of the people report to us after the first session some positive shift that they noticed. That doesn't mean they're healed, and I don't believe this heals them. I believe you heal you. You're a healer, you heal you. I don't believe this heals people, but I do believe that this helps to shake the tree of that central nervous system that gets stuck and says, hey, that's not working for you. Let's try a different way. And it allows for that central nervous system to come back to balance, back into homeostasis, so that it can really sort of reboot itself, so to speak. But then when you have somebody that has a chronic condition, not even to mention a condition like autism, which is more of a cognitive issue. I mean, I have kids that I've worked with 2, 3, 4 years because the parent says, you don't understand, Barry, my kid loves you. It's part of their social, it's part of their interaction. And hands down, kids who, imagine what it's like to have a father come to you who says, my daughter never looked me in the eye. She's looked me in the eye. Or kids who never spoke, and after one session, they're talking. We see this every day with kids that are on the autism spectrum. So whether it is a very involved, intricate, complex condition, or hey, can you help me with my anxiety? My child has ADD, ADHD. We see this helping in a rapid yet orderly manner, swiftly, enduringly, sustainably, in a way that's really almost borders on kind of hard to believe. And the proof is in the pudding. And that's really where I say to folks, hey, you've got nothing to lose. It's not invasive. It can't hurt you. It could only help your child or you. And while you're getting your child, give yourself a favor and do yourself a favor and find out what it's like to have such a calm, relaxed nervous system. Phenomenally helpful for migraine and headaches, among others. And
that's an interesting question there, migraine. So somebody coming in, they get migraine, they get triggered on a migraine so easily through either sound or food or whatever, and they're afraid to come in because they put it, they don't want that something to trigger them back into that migraine. What do you have to say to those people?
I want to say, my wife has migraine, and I remember 3 years ago, she was curled up in a ball, and we did a 20-minute treatment, and she went from a 10 out of 10 to a 4 in 10 minutes, passed out, never took the Imitrex, woke up in the morning, no migraine, and knock on wood, since that day, she has not had one migraine headache. Greg Gillespie, 30-year retired master gunnery sergeant, had migraine after migraine after migraine headache. No more migraine after doing a number of IASIS sessions. I had this one person bring his wife who had 20 years migraine. And for the last 5 years, he said, when he brought her in, every day for 5 years. Can you imagine the suffering? We finished the session. She came in with a migraine. I said, what are you noticing? She said, tears coming down. Oh my gosh, I don't have a migraine. I'm telling you, maybe we did 10 sessions, and to my knowledge, and I tracked her for months, no migraine. I mean, wow. You know, there's a part of me that wants to think, come on, these people are making this up. But you know what I say? Mamas don't lie. And when a mama tells you what she's telling you about her kid, she's not making it up. And when we hear what this does for OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADD, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, and so many therapists are working with this because they're seeing how effective it can be in conjunction with EMDR and the other wonderful tools that they're using. We're not saying don't use them. We're saying consider something that basically has research behind it, whose time has come, and we need to be able to do something to really address the needs of all of our family, our friends, our loved ones who are truly suffering.
Right. Now remind us, before we go here, remind us of the research that you've done. You've got a couple studies that prove this stuff out, government-funded billion-dollar studies. Tell us about those real quick.
Sure. So the first study, pilot study,
right?
University of California, San Diego, and VA IRB approval for the pilot study, and it was done at UC San Diego by Dr. Ming-Chong Huang as the PI, the principal investigator. It was published in Brain Injury Journal in September of 2017. Mm-hmm. Secondly, double-blind study, federally funded VA merit study, underway now in its second year, also by the same PI, same doctor at UCSD, federally funded for PTS and traumatic brain injury at UC San Diego. And now I'm thrilled to tell you that we have 4 more studies that are underway. The first 2, Alzheimer's and anxiety and depression, through the University of Texas at Tyler,
right,
led by Gloria and Gary Duke, who are researchers and wonderful individuals that are IASIS certified providers, and 2 more that are also being really led by Gloria and Gary Duke, one for suicide prevention and the other for opioid addiction. So
right.
while there's wonderful modalities out there, there is no image-based evidence like IASIS and transcranial electrical stim, and with 4 studies underway, again, we are people in this country and in our world where we've got to have research. And now, thank God, thanks to the University of Texas at Tyler, Gloria and Gary Duke, and the University of California, San Diego, and the VA, we have and are accumulating a wealth of knowledge that, guess what? It's going to help all ships rise. We want to help all neuro. We want to help all bio. We want to help our brothers and sisters and our families suffering because there's no need.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that information.
Sure.
We know how to get a hold of you at iasistech.com, and you can find a practitioner there by clicking on the links. Sandy, how do people find you if they're in San Diego and they want to book an appointment?
They can also go to that website and put in their zip code, and I'll come up if I'm in their area. I'm also at zenbrains.com. And
Zenbrains with an S, B-R-A-I-N-S?
Zenbrains with a Z.
With a Z, okay. Yeah. Zenbrains with a Z.com. Okay, great. Yeah. And they can just contact you or book an appointment on the website?
Exactly, yes.
Fantastic. Yep. About 30-minute, 45-minute appointment.
Yeah, I'd plan for 45 minutes.
Awesome,
yep.
Awesome. Okay, great. You guys also have a free gift, and if you're in San Diego or Southern California, you're in luck because Sandy is offering a special free gift. What's your gift, Sandy?
So one free treatment, your first treatment for somebody in the family. You can go on my website and you can book right online. There's a button to click, or you can call me or email me, but zenbrains.com is my website.
Got it. So I would go book the appointment and then give her a call, let her know that you saw this training and that you want to book your free session, and then she'll come in and she'll have your free session booked, and you'll be able to experience for yourself what IASIS is like and how it works on you or your child, whoever you choose to have go through it. Awesome. Yes. So thank you for that. For those of you who are not in Southern California, can't book an appointment here, go to the IASIStech.com website, IASIS Tech, TECH.com, and there is an abundance of information there talking about everything from testimonials to descriptions on how it works, videos, white pages, whatever you need. It's there, and you'll be able to read all about IASIS and find a practitioner. Well, it's been a pleasure having both of you on. This has really been enlightening. My guess is that 99% of the people watching this have don't know that these studies exist, don't know that this relief is out there, and I'll bet you there's even a couple families that are going, you know what, the mom's got migraines, the dad's got back from war, and he's got PTSD, and both kids are suffering from behavioral issues because dad's not been around, or whatever the issues are, and they're all going, wow, we could transform our family by using this stuff. So
it's true, Bob. So many of our providers initially wind up getting the technology for their children, for their loved ones, for themselves. And, you know, it has to start at home. When we see what this can do for our families, and then we see what it can do for our patients and our community and our country and our planet, it's such a blessing. And I think you're a blessing for helping to spread the word of this and other forms of technology and opportunities for people to heal, because there aren't enough people like you who have the passion and the dedication and the commitment to do that. So God bless you for your great work and for the privilege of having myself and Sandra on today.
Well, thank you very much. And that is another episode of the ADHD Toolbox. We've got just such a rich conversation here. Go back and rewatch this, and go to the websites that were discussed here, IASIStech.com and Zenbrains with a Z.com. Thank you again for watching. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Sandy, for being on our show, and we'll see you on the next episode.